Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Triangle Offense. I'm Monish. As always, I'm joined by Nishant. In our recent episode, we spoke about the winners from the trade deadline. Today, we'll be talking about the losers. And one obvious name comes out in this discussion is the Houston Rockets. What are they doing? At the start of the season, they had Russell Westbrook, they had James Harden. Right now, they have no one. They got really no one substantial in return. What's happening with the Houston Rockets? This is a team that is this is a very successful team. It's a globally very popular team.
Sure.
What's happening with the Rockets? There is no beacon of hope in this franchise at this moment. What's happening with the Rockets?
Can I just say, to an extent, I get what OKC are doing because they've amassed so many picks that just at least a couple of them are going to go right. And this is an org that in the past has made great picks and then developed talent. So it's not as speculative as it is for some other teams, right? So I get that. I have no idea what Houston are doing. I genuinely don't. As you said, they started out the season with... So first of all, let's take a step back, right? They gave up, They sent out Chris Paul in a formula that was largely working. They got in Westbrook, and in doing so, they gave up a bunch of stuff, a large part of their future.
Yep.
That season ended, whatever happened. And then somewhere on the way, they also tossed out Clint Capella and any chance of really having a pick and roll game and any kind of interior presence. And they said, we're going all the way on small ball. So PJ Tucker's a big man. Great. It did whatever it did, and they crashed out in the semifinals in the West. Cut to this season. Westbrook's gone, and in return they get John Wall and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. Then they somehow decide, no, they need a big man. Should have just kept Capella, no? They need a big man. So now they have DeMarcus Cousins, who then at some point they cut in the same season. And they have Chris Wood, who honestly, that's been their only positive point this season. He's out injured, but he's been great when fit. Then you have John Wall, in and out of injuries forever. And this season's no different. Then they had Victor Oladipo. They got some stuff in the Harden trade. They tossed some more talented youngsters out, and they got Victor Oladipo only to trade him away because he's on a dying contract, and got hardly anything in return because Miami didn't give up anything, nothing whatsoever. So now, net of all transactions, this is what they got for James Harden. They got 4 first-round picks, and we'll talk about that. That's good, but we'll talk about that. 5 first-round pick swaps, which is whatever. Let's see what they are when they come around. Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Dante Exum, Kuruc. What the hell? Of this, Kuruc was also sent out along with PJ Tucker, another guy they gave up to the Bucks in return for whoever the hell they got, Augustine or whatever. What is this? And okay, the only bright spot here is 4 first-round picks. That's an underwhelming return for James Harden, especially when that deal also involved Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, whom you moved out for Oladipo, whom you moved out for absolutely nothing. This is the biggest botch job I have seen I've really not seen a worse spell of trades and movements and org management in the history of the NBA, and that includes the Knicks. So that's saying something. I'll just close all this out by saying the only positive out of all of this is they have 4 first-round picks. That first of all, that could mean anything, but all right, 4 first-round picks. What's your best case scenario of any one of those first-round picks? It starts with that pick being as high as possible.
Yeah.
It goes on to that pick resulting in you drafting a talent that could one day be something. Where you put them in training, where you teach them defense, offense, systems, fitness, diet, discipline, integrity, clutch performances, postseason play. In the hope that someday this potential pick that you may or may not have, that you may or may not draft, may or may not turn into a Ben Simmons type. They could have traded for Ben Simmons. Why and if when you have a sure thing? They could have made that move. They could have sent him to Philly. They didn't do it. All they have is a bunch of picks and a bunch of random role players. Some of them are not bad, but they're role players at the end of the day. You gave up your franchise for a bunch of role players. I don't get it. It's bad enough just if you look at this season in silo. It is atrocious if you look at what they've done in the last 1.5 seasons. I give up. I give up on the Houston Rockets. I'm done.
Is there a way that they can finish below the Minnesota Timberwolves? There'll be some justice to whatever they've done. Yeah. They can't be not at the bottom of the league despite all of this, despite losing 20 games in a row. I see no hope for the Houston Rockets. Not just this year. I don't see them doing any well in the next year or the year after that. I feel bad for Yeah, I feel bad for Christian Wood who moved there. I hope he finds a better franchise to go and display his talents. But that was the Houston Rockets, and unfortunately, there's no hope there, at least from our end. The other team that botched it up is a pretty strong team, pretty solid team, a sure shot playoff contender, the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're sure shot anymore because they've been losing matches. They're no longer a 500 team.
Yeah.
When you have the likes of Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown in a squad, along with Kemba Walker and Marcus Smart, you can't be finishing below the top 5 teams, especially in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics sit in ninth spot. They had a 28 million trade exception, which they did nothing about. They got an Ivan Fournier where they should have gone and gotten probably Nikola Vucevic, get some size. They got an Ivan Fournier. They gave out Dominic Theis their size. Another failed window for the Boston Celtics. It never seemed to make a successful trade, do they? I mean, all their current players, Jason Tatum, Jalen Browns, were got from the draft.
Yeah.
They never made a good signing. Made a good trade.
Right.
What's happening with the Celtics? Any positives from them at all?
None that they've made moves for. All their positives are what they already had, and those are pretty bright positives, but none that they really did something about. What do you do when you have a promising prospect and the results currently are not great? You make adjustments. Whether it's a team, it's a player, you make adjustments. That's the smart thing to do. The dumb thing to do is not doing anything about it and hoping that the results change. Then you're leaving it up to chance and others to make mistakes. You're not really taking a step forward. You're just staying where you are and you're hoping others drop. That's pretty much what the Boston Celtics have done. And you mentioned all of their players worth anything are players that they drafted, not really players that they traded for. And that's when they make trades happen, which is almost never. They're now, I mean, it's funny that they're now the patron saints of agreeing terms but not actually making that move happen, closing out the deal, the signing, anything. And that's terrible. And when you add to that the number of players that they've let go in the past, that how they wish they had them now, it only compounds their misery. It's not as bad as the Houston Rockets, but it's pretty bad. Maybe it's worse because this is a team that's been on the brink of the finals for so long now. It's embarrassing that they've actually not gotten in. And despite the young ages of their superstars, I know they'll get better. But you've got to surround them with talent. What has their biggest problem been over the years? The last few years, ever since Jalen Brown and Tatum and all these guys started getting good. They've had a few, and I'll come to the biggest one at the end. One, they had some backcourt issues. They got Kyrie, he wasn't quite fitting in. They gave him away. They did blah, blah, blah. They had Rozier, they gave him away for Kemba, which at the time made sense, but Rozier has been balling out ever since, and Kemba has always been in and out because of injury. When fit, he plays really well, but he's been in and out. Then they had Gordon Hayward, who, boy, could they have used him this season. But they gave him away. And as a result, created a huge trade exception. Great. Are you going to do something with that? Nope. Zilch, nada. Didn't use it at all. Okay. What's your biggest problem? Interior. They don't have a big man worth anything. They had Enes Kanter. They moved him along, and he's been amazing in Portland. I don't know if anyone's watching.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. He's been given a role, and he's doing that to perfection. I'm not saying he didn't turn into Embiid all overnight, but whatever role he was given, he's doing that to perfection. So great move for them. They gave him away. They gave away Theis somewhere in this process, one of the Theis or both of the Theis. I don't know. It's too confusing at this point. But they don't have a big man. They don't have a big man worth anything. They could have made a move. They did make a move. Tristan Thompson didn't work out. They had an opportunity to trade. They have the cap room. They have the exception. They could have gotten a legit all-star level big guy if they made a couple of moves. They did nothing of the sort. It's the exact same Celtics team as it was before the start of postseason of last season. Because they added Tristan Thompson, but it's not doing anything for them. They gave away Harden. They've actually gotten, Gordon. They've actually gotten worse in the process. Gordon Hayward, I mean. They've gotten worse in the process. And then they've done nothing to fix it when they had the chance and when they had the cap room. So, again, another, maybe they have a plan, but as of now, it doesn't look like they do.
The plan is to, I think, play Robert Williams more at the center.
Fantastic.
He's good, but he's very young, and I don't think he's the guy who would elevate them from a playoff spot to a contender. And when you're the Celtics, you really want to contend. You want to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. You want to make the finals, but that's not been happening for a decade now. I don't see it happening in the near future unless they make a big move. I don't think Jason Brown, Jalen Tatum. I mean, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum themselves are going to take them. I think they need support pieces, which is not happening anytime soon. Just summarizing the other moves that happened on deadline day, the Portland Trailblazers, pretty interesting move. They got a Norman Powell.
Yep.
They flipped out Gary Trent Jr., who's incredible from three.
Yep.
But Norman Powell is no bad either. I mean, how do you make this? What do you make of this move?
I love it because the West is actually loaded with backcourts. West has some pretty strong backcourts, and with this move, and maybe you could say they have the best backcourt trio. I'd argue that in the league. I'd argue that because let's not forget, if Brooklyn get Dinwiddie back and they keep him, that's Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Dinwiddie. That's a backcourt. and in the West also, there's next season there's going to be Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and whoever the hell is the third guy. That's still a better backcourt than any three you can put together. It doesn't even matter who the third guy is. Like they could take KCP and that'll be the best backcourt trio. So I think that part can be argued. But what I love about this is they've got Damian Lillard, who's arguably the best point guard in the league. They've got CJ McCollum, who's an above average, pushing on elite backcourt player. And they've got Norman Powell, who can very well get to that level in a season or so, given more opportunities. Because whatever we've seen has been pretty awesome. So from Norman Powell. So now they have three guys in rotation that can all shoot off the dribble, that can all go get their own shot, that can finish pretty well in the interior, and that can create plays every now and then. What that does in the West, where you've got loaded backcourts across the league, is it puts perennial pressure throughout the length of the game on backcourt defenses. Nobody is getting a breather at the other end of the court because there's always at least two guys on court that can create their own shot and make shots for others. So you're on your toes all the time. Golden State on their toes all the time. Whoever the Clippers put on that backcourt, which is as it is a weak combo, they're going to be on their toes all the time. So it gives the other teams no room to breathe on defense because there's always somebody moving up and about on the perimeter. That's why I love this move. That's why it elevates them. Gary Trent Jr.'s shooting will be missed, but Gary Trent Jr. is not Norman Powell in the way that Norman Powell can create his own shot, which means if you don't have great players on the court with Gary Trent Jr., his efficacy goes down just that much as an offensive threat. Norman Powell's doesn't.
Totally.
And I love it. I think they've upgraded.
And I think that was a win for the Raptors as well, who's looking at a rebuilding phase now. I think Gary Trent Jr. is a great shooter to have in the squad. I think he'll improve with more playing time. I think he'll get better and better. Just looking at quickly summarizing the other moves, JJ Redick to Mavs. Do you think it elevates them to a good spot? They lost some of the shooting with
Seth Curry.
They got in Josh Richardson and they lost Seth Curry, right? So JJ Redick brings that 3-point shooting to him. Some of the trades that didn't happen. Lonzo Ball remains with the Pelicans. John Collins remains with the Hawks. I think these are two big names that are going to be in the market at the end of the season. Pelicans, if they keep Ball, I think that's a great win for them. They have a nice core going out there with Ingram and Zion. And with Lonzo Ball, I think they'll be a really tough force to compete with. John Collins has made himself available and I think he's doing really well. I think there'll be a lot of offers for him. That'll be an interesting move to make. Any wins for anyone else you see?
No, I think this is largely it. Some sure. I mean, the Lakers picking up Drummond was a sweet move.
Course.
So that's good for them. In the Lonzo situation, maybe it's a win-win for everyone if Lonzo moves on at the end of the year. Because if they do sign him back, it's going to be a big payday. No more a rookie contract for the Pelicans. Maybe that money is better spent on getting a more experienced guy, especially in the postseason, to buffer the inexperienced exuberance of a Zion and a Brandon Ingram. So maybe they're better off getting a playmaker who's good, who's worth the money, but who also comes with experience. Versus Lonzo, who no doubt deserves the money, but maybe he can go someplace else where he can continue his learning process. Maybe someone with experience already. That kind of puts the Bulls back a little bit because Zach LaVine's also similarly inexperienced in the playoffs. But I'd love to see that happen. The Lonzo, Zach LaVine, Vucevic. I think that makes the Bulls very interesting. So Lonzo's going to get paid. I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to get picked up by some team or the other and get a good contract. It could be a win-win if Lonzo moves on from New Orleans. So that's pretty much the only point I had.
That's a fun team to watch, New Orleans Pelicans. Really love watching them. I hope they get a few more wins, but they've been losing quite a few despite having big leads at the halfway mark. But I think we run out of time. That's all for today. We'll come back and talk tomorrow about a few games that have been happening and we'll analyze some of the teams. But that's all for today. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy, man. See you.